Good morning, everyone, and welcome once again to our SonRise Project call, this weekly support space that is a safe and loving and compassionate place to share and to open up and to learn how to heal and how to help ourselves and our families. God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This morning, I'm so delighted to have a very dear friend back with us, Dr. Julie Lopez. She was here at the SonRise Project. I think she was the fourth call back in 2020. And we have been friends through our children. We met at a swim meet many, many, many years ago. And we have been longtime friends. And she has been such an incredible supporter and healer and listener and expert in this space. So I'm so appreciative to have her back with us. Let me tell you a little bit about who she is, because it's been a little while since she's been here. For over 30 years, Dr. Julie Lopez has been dedicated to the transformation journey of people, places, and businesses. She's an award-winning entrepreneur and social worker, and currently the owner and founder of Viva Partnerships and the Resilient Brain Project. She specializes in trauma and addiction, and she has a host of free resources available online. She has all kinds of ebooks. One of them is called Everything You Need to Know About Trauma. Another resource is the Resilient Brain Project, which helps people. And we'll put all these resources in the chat, and they are on our website as well. If you click on Dr. Julie Lopez, her resources are there. She is a mom. She is a friend. She has been a national speaker on the issue of trauma, addiction, and PTSD. And in fact, the last time she was here with us, we talked about PTSD. And she's here today in June as part of National PTSD Awareness Month. And Dr. Julie has a ton of experience. I've witnessed it and I've been a part of it, thankfully. She has a ton of experience helping people walk through their healing journey from trauma. So today, our focus is the power and value of leveraging our intention and our inner compass as a valuable resource for healing and for moving past our trauma. So, Dr. Julie, thank you for being here this morning. Always so grateful to have you. And I want to start by first having you share a little bit about your personal background and your journey to this space and all the incredible work that you do. And then also share the definition of trauma and why it's so important to get in touch with that. So, two parts, please.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I really appreciate being here again and watching the journey of the SonRise Project. I really admire your dedication and your consistency and your perseverance. No matter what's been going on in your life, you've held this space on Sunday mornings. And we were reminiscing about 10 minutes ago before the call started how we as swim moms waking up at like 4:30 in the morning thought 7 a.m. was a good time East Coast to do this call on Sundays. And then
Right.
she moved it.
That's right. We
How
started
many
at
years
7
ago has that
a.m.
been? Yeah.
We started at 7 a.m. because we said, let's do it at sunrise. And then around that time when we started, about 7 a.m. was the sunrise time. So, but no, 9 a.m. is better and still early for those on the West Coast, but we feel it's a good time. But anyway, thank you for being here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. So this is a very personal journey for me, just my profession and what I've been focused on. I had a very traumatic entry into the world. I was born to a 16-year-old Mexican mother who basically was forced by her parents to give me away. It was a bad time to be a teen mom. And I know it's hard anytime, but it was particularly stigmatizing back in, well, it was 1969, 1970. And so I spent the first 3 months of my life in an orphanage and then was adopted by my family, also a Mexican-American family. So that was just a very defining part of the way I came into the world, although I didn't think anything of it growing up, not at all. It was all white picket fences and everything's great and everything's fine. So when I started having some pretty serious struggles in my teens and early 20s, I had no idea why. It was like there was no everything around me. And I had always been told I'm so lucky, I was chosen, all the things. I always knew I was adopted, but I didn't realize how much had impacted very deeply in my body, how much I had been impacted. And I'm going to be honest, I had, because I was so externally focused on survival and like making sure I was okay. Like I was always wanting my parents to be okay, wanting my teachers to be okay, wanting my friends to be okay. But I never had a sense of me being okay. I
Right.
actually have an engineering degree. I got a degree in systems engineering
I don't think
all
I knew
because
that.
my
Oh,
parents
that's
and teachers said, this is what you should do. And I was like, everything looked great on the outside, but inside I was this little traumatized person who was just like trying to check boxes and make sure I
right.
did the right things. And so I was very, very driven by outside expectations and making sure I looked the part of what I
Yeah.
wanted. You didn't know that, Kelly?
I did not know that you were a systems engineer. No, I did know the story of your mom, but it's interesting how are you connecting the story about your mom and the desire to have everything look a certain way? Like, do you
No,
think you
that's a whole
can?
other
Oh,
story.
I
I
see.
always
Okay.
like to give a little shout out to. That is the plight of a lot of people who are adopted, um,
Oh, I see.
because there is a dominant narrative about everything being fine and not really recognizing what happens internally when a child is. Oh, this is a whole other training
Okay.
that I do,
Okay.
but and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on. We're so complicated and we're so
Hmm.
amazing. This human system is so complicated. We're
Hmm.
more sophisticated than the most sophisticated supercomputers that we've
Hmm.
designed up in this age of tech and advancements and AI and every other thing. Our
Hmm.
systems are complicated and we're
Right.
hungry and adaptive and we're built to survive. And so we're taking in data all over the place. And yes, in fact, and one of the times, I don't know how many times I've been on SonRise, but we've had some pretty interesting topics. But one
Hmm.
of the times I really gave a lot of praise to Joy DeGruy and her work with
Yeah,
post-traumatic slave syndrome, which is
absolutely.
all about these generational impacts of trauma that can live in our systems, in our behavior, and in our felt experience and how that works. So each one of these is a really rich topic, but
Right. That's a whole separate conversation about that type of trauma. And we did do that topic. You're right. I think it was in 2020, maybe.
it's all a blur.
It is all a
Not only
blur.
did COVID happen and life, I mean, there was so much loss and struggle and suffering,
Yes.
pain, but I also went through menopause. So my memory is like
Hmm.
100% shot. We did it sometime, but I don't have no idea when.
Yeah, I have the notes on it. That's okay. That's all good. But today, so you
But
shared your
so today,
story.
yes.
Mhm.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you for sharing. No, no, thank you. Keep going. Thank
Oh,
you for
well, so today I actually want to walk people through something experiential. And I know it's Sunday morning, and I know that you're doing all the things and maybe listening while you're doing other stuff. So even if you can't write things down, I want to have you really think about it in your mind. But I'm wanting to empower everyone. My goal for the end of the our little time this morning is that we have a very simple template of how to tap into our system's inner wisdom in times of struggle. So that's my goal I'm going to put out there. And that has everything to do with what Kelly said. It's, of course, built on the understanding of how our systems metabolize traumatic experiences, things that are hard. Sometimes people minimize what's traumatic because the word sounds like, oh my gosh, it has to be a fire or a shooting or like a really extreme thing that the news would report on, but things can disrupt our nervous system that are just chronic neglect, things that seem invisible, but we work to understand them, like
Mhm.
racism or classism or
Yeah.
other factors that are invisible. I resonate a lot with that invisible. That is my life's work.
Mm,
And that's because, again, like adopted people are overrepresented in suicide statistics,
mm,
in substance abuse struggles, in residential treatment facilities because we've got a whole bunch of invisible things going on.
Mhm.
And when that's happening and you don't understand, all you can conclude is, oh my gosh, so and so or me or my loved one is crazy. And it's not true. So I'm
Mhm.
really really, really invested in uncovering those invisible parts of stuff. So
Yeah. And I think for this audience and for most of the people that come here on Sundays, there is, there obviously is a history of trauma in this country. And when you look at the statistics and the numbers and you realize of the 405 years we've been here, we have not been free except for 15% of the time.
yeah,
Like literally, and that's traumatic. Think about it. Like
so traumatic.
yeah, so 85 years in this country of living with suppression and legalized suppression. So that is traumatic. And the stereotypes of Black women being Sapphire, the angry Black woman, Mammy, the happy slave and caretaker of the family, or Jezebel, the sex pot. There's three archetypes. And so the trauma of what we deal with on a daily basis and the marginalization of us as a people, particularly Black women, and Black men, both the trauma, the stereotypes, the marginalization, the inequities, all the things. That's a whole nother conversation, but I was just double clicking on the point to say um, the adopt people who are adopted, I understand as well. And I also have a personal understanding of just being a Black woman in America and what that feels like from a marginalization and a stereotypical, just racism. So again, I don't want to go down that whole path because that's not the topic for the day either.
But it is, but it actually
Okay.
is. It is,
Okay.
it all is. It's all there because I'll get into this a little bit later as we're doing some of our own application of what I want to share, but all that matters. It all
Yeah.
matters,
Hmm.
right? Nobody likes to be told who they are or to be put into a box. Nobody likes to be, told to kind of just smile and get over it. It
Right.
it doesn't honor someone's humanity or experience. And a particular reason why that's relevant is as a parent, which I know this was designed initially in the
Yes.
move to empower parents with their children that are struggling or their young
Mhm.
adult children, is that we're all part of a family unit. So who you are and what you struggle with, even if you never say a word, it matters and it has an impact, right?
Mhm.
Not to mention the world that we live in. And those types of things are things that we naturally, as human beings, take in. And even without our conscious brain, try to adapt to and survive. I am telling you, the reason I shared the story about my, you know, 0 to age maybe 22 and this whole external survival mode of
Yeah.
understanding the world is because I went down a professional path. Do you know how hard it is to get an engineering degree? Do you know
Yeah, I
how
can
hard it is
imagine.
to get into engineering school and then to work for a couple of years on something you don't even really want to do?
Mm,
That's the level that I was vibing. I'm not safe and I need to do all these things to be safe in the world, right? It was
right.
all based off of that early story that I consciously wasn't even thinking about.
Mm,
And you're an empowered Black woman, Kelli. And so you're giving voice and name to things that sometimes Black women, Black men, white, everybody doesn't even
yeah.
see. That is the whole point of being empowered. It's to see the invisible things in order to be
Hmm.
dealing with the true reality and not an oversimplified understanding of things.
Right. But as we learn to, you said something in one of our calls, and another speaker talked about the importance of sharing and being vulnerable and being open on that path to healing. I think you talk about me being empowered. I don't know that it's empowered. I would say more like I have created a space to help myself. And by doing so, it helps other people. It's for us as a collective, but it also helps me every week. And is that empowered? I don't know.
Well,
Um,
I think of empowered as having language to identify things that previously were invisible.
Interesting.
And so your example, when you talked about the three archetypes of Black women that are alive and well in our culture right now,
Mhm.
I promise you, there are Black women walking along that have never stopped to think about the boxes they're being put in.
Right. Or
So how in the world
whatever.
can you
Yeah,
change something or work around it or even move past it if you don't even see it happening?
right. That's so true. Well, how, as we think about, you know, trauma could be going through a divorce. Um, it could be many of our cases dealing with our children and, struggling through what to do, as a
Right.
child might be, or a young adult might be addicted to something or, on a very different journey or cutting. We had a whole conversation
Yep.
on cutting here at the SonRise Project. Can you talk about, as a parent, how to walk through, how do you move through those spaces that are highly traumatic for the
Yeah.
child, but also for yourself? How, as a parent, do you use your intuition and some of the tools that I know you want to share with us?
So I'm going to do an exercise with everyone that I want you to do for yourself. And it's a springboard to how you can start to look at your child differently and get
Okay.
actually to a space and place that is going to produce results. So, first of all, I know I'm on a Zoom format, but you all may be multitasking or listening or driving or whatever. But if you can, I would love to see a show of hands. If you know, you just go down to the reactions bar and you can um, raise your hand. It's one of the options if you're on Zoom, or you can just, put something in the chat with a thumbs up or a yes. But how many of you have at some point felt overwhelmed by an experience or situation at some point in time? Raise your hand. Yeah, I'm seeing hands go up. Yes, 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 yes. I see you. Well, guess what? That is a totally human experience. We all have limits. We all get overwhelmed. Yes, Rose, I see you in the chat. And we have experiences where our system gets overwhelmed. It just happens. Sometimes our limits get crossed. Sometimes our boundaries get crossed. Sometimes we've just said yes to too much. Sometimes life throws us curveballs and it's overwhelming. So I'm going to tell you a little story about me. And I want to say, so when we're overwhelmed as human beings, we always look to cope with that. That is a natural drive. We are built to survive. We're going to do it even without conscious thought. Our system's just going to do it. So when you're overwhelmed, I don't know if a specific time came to mind, but I'll tell you a collection of times when I have in the past felt overwhelmed. And interestingly enough, because Kelli knows I'm pretty outgoing, in social settings, I get overwhelmed. And when I'm overwhelmed, one of the struggles that I have is that I use food for comfort. And so when we think about addictions, Kelli just talked about addictions. It happens to be my subspecialty. Trauma and addictions are my thing. And so anytime our system's overwhelmed, we're going to look for a way to cope with it. Now, the socially acceptable ways to cope with it are like working or exercise or maybe shopping-ish, depending how far you go with it, right? But it's like a compulsive behavior that gives us a little buffer. And so for me, this food thing would come up and I would just eat a lot of things and I would rationalize it like, oh, I'm an adventurous eater and I love taste and flavor and food and it's a part of my culture and my celebration and all that stuff. But if I was really being honest with myself, I was eating to a feeling rather than a hunger. It was a hunger. And it wasn't until I learned what I'm about to teach you guys that I could actually choose something different because it was happening way down deep in my nervous system. I wasn't even aware of it. I was rationalizing it to myself like we all do. But I want, if you take nothing else away from here, I want to normalize the humanness of compulsion and addiction. A lot of times in our culture, we
Yes.
put like, oh my gosh, addiction, like we actually even criminalize it. It's portrayed in movies
That's
and
right.
commercials and things like that as like really, really bad. And we talk about it that way. And it can be, I don't want to minimize, it can be so destructive. Drugs, alcohol, like it can be, it introduces lying and stealing. And I mean, there are so many painful things that can come out of an addiction, but at the base of it, it is a normal human driver. It is a warning bell that something that our system's overwhelmed. So once I learned how to do this stuff, I actually now have a whole bag full of tricks and things that I can do when I get overwhelmed like that. And I can feel that I'm about to start eating a bunch of stuff to make myself feel calm. So that's
That's
what I
so
want to do.
good because it's like stuffing the pain. I did that last week. I had 4 Krispy Kremes and don't remember eating them, but I remember them being gone. But that just stuffed the pain, like in the 2 hour period,
Yeah.
maybe. And so, yeah, I can't wait to hear these
And
tips.
Krispy Kremes, I haven't had one in a really, really long time, but they're so soothing. They're
Hmm.
so like light and
Yeah,
fluffy and warm, and the sugar is like,
and
oh,
perfect.
that's a whole other thing. Yeah, I can talk that talk for a while, um, but it's just normal. Like we're
Mhm.
human, we go through stuff, but it's a moment.
Mm.
Okay, so here's what I want you to do. If you have the luxury of pen and paper this morning, I want you to write down that thing. Like I want you to write down like, hey, when are times that I have felt overwhelmed? And what do I find myself doing to manage the overwhelm? Like what do I do? And we're going to do a little exercise. There's two parts to it. And the first part is you leverages the Socratic method, which is we're going to ask questions, questions, questions of ourselves. So you write down the thing, like, okay, and it can be a general thing. Sorry, my one dog who doesn't like to be trapped I'm in my daughter's room.
Aw,
Um,
love the dog.
and then my needy dog's gonna come in. Okay, come on in, baby. Um,
So
okay,
cute.
sorry about that.
No worries.
So you write down, so for me in my example, that would have been kind of a social setting. I'd write down, okay, sometimes in social settings, I notice I'm feeling overwhelmed, right? And it leads to this like compulsive eating thing, but it's the social setting. And so then the next question, so you've got the like, what is the thing or place where you feel overwhelmed? And it could be, it could be my child just lied to me, or my partner's not being supportive, or it can be anything, right? But there's a thing that's like, okay, I feel overwhelmed. So then the next question, I'm just going to use myself as an example, would be like, what about the social setting is overwhelming? And again, that feels a little hard because I have a lot of social skills and it looks a certain way outside, but inside it feels different. So it's like you have to start digging here, right? So it's like, why does that feel overwhelming? Okay. And so I think it's like in those moments, I'm not sure what's going to happen next. Like I can't really control what's happening. And so I start to feel a little bit anxious. Okay. So write that down. Okay, why am I feeling anxious? Like what is it that's anxiety producing? So I have to sit with that for a second. Like, right, logically, it shouldn't be. These are all friends and they like me logically. But if I'm really sitting with like what I'm feeling anxious about, to be honest, I feel like I'm going to do something, they're not going to like me, that I'm not going to be like, not going to be, you know, accepted. And so then it's like, why wouldn't you feel accepted, right? This is where we start to, it's like, why wouldn't you feel accepted? And now I've got to get into like kind of an illogical zone because I know logically I'm already accepted. I was invited, people wanted me there. It's like, why wouldn't you? And so then I'm just like listening to my body, like, what? Okay. And then it's like this part, it's like really not rational. But yeah, I feel like people are going to reject me. Okay. And so this is not necessary for the Socratic method, but this is just true. I've done a lot of my own personal therapy, and I recognize through my 30 plus years of study and stuff like that, that wow, this relinquishment thing from my biological family really did a number on me. So once I say the word rejection, I'm like, ding, ding, ding. It's like every adoptee's like pain point. It's like rejection. So it's like, would I feel that way? I was like, okay, well, I guess somewhere deep in my heart, I feel like really unwanted, you know?
Mm,
And so, like, why do I feel unwanted? Again, we have to get past the rational. We're getting deep, deep down. If it doesn't
mhm,
make sense, all the better, because I'm telling you, again, it's a whole other topic, but like this multi-generational trauma lives in our cells. We know this through the study of epigenetics. We know through behavioral conditioning. We learn things from our parents, from our grandparents, even if they're not there, like prenatal psychology, a whole other topic. Early infant development, before we remember, we don't really have conscious memory till the age of 3, but you better believe our system that's built for adaptation is hungry for data and it's taking it in. So if some weird answers are coming up, it's okay. If they don't match what you think logically,
mhm,
it's okay. I promise
mhm,
you it's relevant. And this is where we're starting to leverage the power of what our body already knows. Our mind might not know it, but our body does. And I've seen this thousands of times. So you're asking the questions, why unwanted? And so at the very core of my little broken-hearted me that I don't carry around consciously is that I feel unloved, right? And you can see how, because before the age of 1.5, as a baby, you actually psychologically feel fused with your mother. You don't even have a separate identity. I know this from my study of infant psychology. So what happens when part of you just goes away? And then even the conscious part, I do remember when you're adopted, or even if someone makes a joke, someone might say to you, "Oh, you're adopted." It's like saying you're not wanted, basically. Even in like
mhm,
joking around. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. That's not your, or that's not your real dad, or that's not your, it's really like a negative thing. Anyway, so deep down underneath all my eating struggles is this feeling of unloved. Okay, so I'm going to just
mhm,
check in real quick before I keep
mhm,
scooting along. If you're doing this and you're actually doing your own,
mhm,
and no pressure because this is a low key environment, this is a give space. But did anyone have
mhm.
anything pop up where they're like, oh, shoot, like for me, getting to unloved is a pretty far cry from eating a few Krispy Kremes, let's just say. It's like, what?
Mhm.
That doesn't make any sense. But when you go through it step by step by step, anyone have something that they
God.
want to share either in the chat
I have
or
a question.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So as I'm listening to your example, mine's
Yeah.
a little different. So I guess the feeling of anxiousness and things that I have tend to be, and I'm not sure how my child who is going through challenges is going to react in a certain situation, or I'm not sure how my mom, who's struggling with dementia, is going to react in situations. So it's a little bit more of the inability to know what's going to happen next that tends to cause the anxiety. Like, here we go. We're going to the family. Like, maybe the next time it's July, whatever the next celebration or whatever it is. And just having to deal with like having to be I think in the archetypes that Kelly was talking about, the strong person, making sure that everything is working and always having the responsibility of making sure you're paying attention to all the details that everybody is okay. And then entering into that space and knowing honestly, there's zero chance that I can control my child or control my mother or whatever it is, because I'm in the sandwich situation and never knowing what's happening. And so I've been trying to kind of like, I'm following you, Julie, but I
Uh-huh.
was just trying to be like, if I'm honest, it's a little bit different. It isn't about those type of things. I don't get so anxious at work. It really is the personal. It really is balancing the menopause and all of those other things. And so I just wanted to put that out there so I didn't get lost in what you're trying to do as I'm
Yeah,
trying to honestly relate.
perfect. Okay. So are you open to doing this with me?
Oh, I am actually doing it with you.
No, I know, but I wanted, if you're open to it, I would like to Socratic method what you shared a little bit more.
Okay.
Are you open to it?
Okay, yes.
Okay. And how do I pronounce your name? Is it Mania?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I go by Jules.
Okay, Jules. Cool. Some
Jules.
people call me Jules too. So, okay, Jules. So what I heard was like the situations happen and you feel out of control and you feel like you're supposed to be the linchpin. Was that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And so what happens if you're not the linchpin?
Everyone really pretty much keeps looking towards me. So like even when I'm like I'm going into this and I'm just going to be a participant with everyone else, like everyone in the family turns around and looks to me to like handle the situation, or I don't know. And I'm like, I literally can't control anyone.
Yeah. And so when they all look to you, what's that like for you? Because you said you're like, I don't know. Like what is that? Like when you say, oh, I don't know, what's happening?
Well, the anxiety comes when I'm observing all of the behaviors that has everyone a little bit anxious too. Like they're like, someone's about to go off, or they can kind of see a disconnect or whatever. And so then my anxiety comes up because I know I can't control anyone. And I also know that I've spent quite a bit of money in therapy, making sure that I understand that I can't control anyone.
Yeah.
And it's hard because they're looking at me and it's kind of like the feeling of like the tapping of the foot where you're just kind of like, I'm just trying to, hold my peace here and I'm trying to say my serenity prayer. And so the anxiety wells up in my chest
Yes.
and I'm just trying to like sit still with it.
My gosh, you know what? I actually started holding my chest while you were talking. I didn't even know you were going to say that, but I was like, oh my gosh, I can just feel it. So you're holding so much. And so what happens when, like in your imagination, and I can hear that you've done all the work, like you're sitting in this, like it's like white knuckling it, but like in your imagination, in your worst imagination, like what could happen if what could happen? Everyone else is anxious, you're anxious. What's the fear?
Well, if it's with my mom, she might say something off the chain and then cause, stress with other family members that then sets other folks off. And because there's some dementia with that, then it's the whole, how do I make the peace with that? And then the domino effect of what did you bring up that you ain't need to bring up? I mean, it's a whole Tyler Perry movie. I don't know. Do you know what
That's
I mean?
fine. Okay, Tyler Perry movie, but go with me. Like worst case scenario, like what down the pike could happen that's gonna, right? It's like a mess. It's like a disaster mess. And what happens then?
I
Like,
guess,
what is your body gripping for? You know what I mean?
well, in the past, it would be like, you know what, let me just get some wine and chill and I'm just going. And that used to be my go-to. And that has not ended well. And so now it's one of those I sometimes just leave and then or let me just go for a walk or let me go somewhere else and then just to deal with my nervous energy because the tapping then is distracting to those who can't take tapping, right?
Yeah.
So that will know that like I know the physical behavior, which for me would be the tapping of the feet or the, tapping of the fingers. So now I know I get up and I'll move. But then everyone is watching me. And that's that pressure in the family when you're like, you know, the go-to person. And it's kind of, and even though they're all aware, I've been doing my work and they see it, it's still the issue of, well, if I react in a way or go away or say nothing, I'm really good at self-control. But then people like they look to me and then people would leave. Do you know what I mean? Like my reaction sets it off. And I hate that. And so then I find myself just sitting through it, but then I'm paying the physical cost of just like I could feel the body stress. And then now I'm just
Yes. I can hear so much of your awareness, Jules, and the tapping. I can hear all the work that you've done. I can hear it. And this is such a great one that you picked because you actually said, hey, in the past, I'd go just drink some wine. It is, you picked a perfect one. Your system was feeling overwhelmed. You were like, shoot. And there's a mapping in there. And I'm going to give you a few examples of something that might be irrational, but could be driving your system. Again, not rational because you've been doing your work. You've seen this enough times. Like it's even though it's tough and it's very fragile, like you're in it and doing it. But I'm going to say something that sounds a little bit like exaggerated, and you just tell me which one resonates most to you. So is it kind of like you only tap into your body when I'm saying this, because you said you're feeling it in your body. Like, is your body feeling like, again, please just don't go rational, just physical. Like, I'm gonna die, I'm in danger, you know, I'm a failure, I'm all alone. Tell me if any of those resonate more than something else.
my body is screaming help. My heart is pounding. My chest is tight. My temples, I have like those two veins on the side of my head. They're physical. They actually are bulging. And I know that only because family has said, uh-oh, there goes that vein in her head again, which
Yep.
because they could physically see the bulging of the temple.
Yep.
Um, and it's just a tension. And I'm trying to, that's when I start to do the deeper breaths because I'm aware.
So great.
But depending on the situation, instead of it looking like deep breaths, it probably looks like I'm panting, ready to pounce, which isn't wrong sometimes.
Deep breaths are so helpful. Okay, so Jules, did any of those four, just so others can follow along, resonate with you? Or it could be I'm out of control, but I did say your body was saying help. So sometimes help is like I'm all alone. It's like, do you know what I mean? Because it's like I just need a hand. Someone step in and like be there with me or be there for me.
Right. And that's the hard part because the change part in the cycle is, when I would drink my wine or and it would be like you could feel the immediate physical like depressant. But then when you're not drinking the wine anymore, there's no place to go.
Yep.
So
that's right.
that's the struggle. There's no place to go and just having to sit in it. So that's where it's just still stays physical.
Okay. So what I'm going to tell you and everyone else, and we're going to do it with you, Jules, and thank you for your bravery. There is a place to go. There's actually a lot of places to go, even if you're going nowhere. And we're starting to explore that now. I just need to know from your body which of these very basic kind of general ideas resonate, not logically, but the body part, the part that's saying help. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like I'm asking my system, what is it? If we think of your body like a supercomputer, one you're not controlling with the frontal lobe of your brain, it is vibing on something. Your temples are pulsing. That's a good indicator. Your fight, flight, and freeze response has been activated, which is part of how we survive stuff. You've heard those stories where like blood rushes to your arms and legs and suddenly you can pick the car up off your friend. That is like a survival thing. That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful, right? Your body's doing exactly what it was built to do, and it's got some data coming in that's telling you that you're out of control. You told me that, oh my gosh, I can't control all these things. This is so bad, and you need help. You're like, help. My heart's saying, help, 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 right? So when I break it down that way into like very simple messaging, you know how I Socratic methoded mine down into like I'm unloved. I want to do that for you. In that moment, your body has a strong danger signal and it's got some kind of message, even if you don't think it logically. And actually, I'm going to have you pause for a second, Jules, because you have done a ton of work. I'm going to open it up to anyone else who is getting a sense of where I'm going with this, because I'm not going to leave you hanging here. Then there's the second part is the beautiful thing of where you can go with it. But when you're hearing Jules, and this may be resonating with your own story or what you see happening with your family or with your children or all the things, if you were to answer for her, like, what are you seeing in that basic message, you know?
What she said does resonate with me. I have a similar experience with feeling responsible for other people's choices. And I get that overwhelming sense of danger, like something's going to fail. It's going to be my fault. They are going to blame me. I rationalize, I know I can't control these things. I know that it's their responsibility, but it feels like my responsibility. Even when I'm saying that's not mine, I feel like I can help, so I should help. And if I don't help, everyone's going to fail and no one's coming to save us. No one's coming to save me. It just feels like imminent danger. It feels like,
Oh my God.
even when I don't know, they're like,
Yes.
what are you afraid of? I don't know, but I feel afraid of something. And that's a thing I describe all the time. The feeling, it feels like I feel nervous about what I don't know. I just feel it. I feel really panicked and nervous.
Yeah. Okay. So you said a whole bunch of things, Brianna, and I really appreciate you popping in. But here's where we're trying to get at, because when you boil it down into the thing, right? I'm out of control. I'm going to die. You may need to journal, just Socratic method. Why do I feel that? Why do I feel that? Because we're getting into this invisible place. It's called implicit memory. If you want to read more about it, I did write a book about it called Live Empowered, but you're getting into this is the gold, even if it's sucky gold, right? Even if like these are all bad kind of feelings, but your body is going to be doing what it does to combat that. And if wine is the best thing, then wine is the best thing, right? We're in a no judgment zone, but there are other ways. And so we're trying to get at the least destructive way to move what's happening deep down. So Brianna, you talked about being in danger. I'm going to die, maybe even feeling bad. Like if I don't solve this, we're all going down. If I fail, like it's bad, right? So it's not even logical things. You might not feel like you're bad, but if you Socratic method it, maybe it's I'm bad. And why this matters, because I want to give you what you do with it. And thank you, Brianna, for speaking and Jules for speaking. And hopefully that helped everyone follow along. This is the deeper dive, because those codes in our body respond to sensory input. We are deep in your unconscious, deep in your unconscious. You might not even think these things. Let's just say actually, I'll use me. Mine is I'm unloved. Okay. So what do I need? I need the opposite at that moment. And the Krispy Kremes are making me feel calm and loved and whatever, right? You got to find that deep, deep core thing, because then every sensory input you're going to give yourself is the opposite. So what did I do? You don't have to do these things. Everyone has choices, but you're looking for visual things, auditory things like music, sound, sensory, smell, maybe lavender or mint. If it's like, I'm in danger, it's like, what makes you feel safe, right? Tactile is another sensory. I'm wearing my favorite sweater. I've got my fluffy this. I wear my, whatever. It makes me feel cozy, my weighted blanket. So I have a tattoo. I have a mini micro tattoo. My friends think it's a joke. It's like so little. It's a little heart. But what's important about it is it's oriented towards me and it's outlined halfway. So it's a J, like my name, Julie. And so it's like my own self-love. And it's a visual reminder. I just press on it and like be like, okay, you're loved. I have a picture of me and my best friend. It's like a visceral kind of thing, right? Like I also have some songs that remind me of a beautiful time with a group of friends on my birthday. It like just reminds me I'm loved at a moment where I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, unloved. It's not what I'm thinking logically. This took a lot of therapeutic work. I'm giving you like many sessions of therapy if you can like grab this at this moment, because your goal is, okay, so for Jules, if it was, I'm out of control, what are the sensory things that make you feel more in control? I hear you doing some things. I know what tapping is. That can breathing, right? I can't control all these people, but I can control my breath, and certain breath patterns, which you can learn more about on our free online thing, the Resilient Brain Project, will actually tell your body, like, I'm safe right now. There are certain breath patterns that are going to tell your body something that you logically could never tell yourself. I talked about that white knuckling, right? It's like, how can I, and for Brianna, if it is like, again, we'd have to Socratic method it a little bit more, but if it is, we're all going to die, like, what are the things that make you feel alive? Maybe there's an aromatherapy of mint that, like, you smell it and you're like, oh, right, it's fresh. I'm open. Posture. That's a physical input. Believe it or not, you can like go like this and feel so bad. And if you put your shoulders back and your chin up, you literally cannot feel down. I mean, you can feel down, but it changes. You breathe into that a few moments in time and it will change what's going on, but it's custom tailored. Why I wanted to do it with you is because I want you to be able to do it with your kids, or I want you to be able to teach them how this works. And when someone is struggling with any type of compulsive anything, I do not care if it's heroin or fentanyl or shopping. It's just the body's way of saying, I got to the overwhelm point. And there's another way to work with it. And it's not that you're crazy or bad or all this stuff. It's that you're a human being. And this is just information that your body got to its breaking point. So I am not sure how much time I have. That's why I started speeding
You
up.
have about 6-7 minutes left. Well, about 10. We can go really close to 10. But this is all super helpful, and people have put in the chat essential oils, breathing. I've added burning candles. I'm sensory. I love smell, like good smells.
So I have
Go, please.
So recently, I failed to mention that I was feeling it in my intestines, my stomach. And at first I used to think like, wow, I'm getting sick to my stomach. I didn't know that was a thing that you could actually, but then recently, and I just put that out there, I'm working through it, that I found that because of it really was impacting my intestines. And it really, through a colonoscopy and endoscopy, they're just like, it's the tension, which I didn't really know that could happen.
Oh, yeah.
And so to the point where like they ended up giving me medication for antispasms. So what I thought were just like, it was just, I was mentally thinking I was feeling my tummy ache because of it. It really was physical. And so what I've learned, and I just put that out there in the space that I'm still struggling with, is the tightening of the stomach was actually the tightening up the intestines. And that is something that blew me away, because it actually was causing physical ailments that now I'm addressing. So I just put it out there because that's another reason why I'm focusing so much on my physical, because long term, I had no clue that it could actually impact my intestines. And it is.
Yeah, I was going to pop something up here, but I'm having trouble with there it is. So I have, because of my work and because this is how I work, I have been an eyewitness so many times to people reducing their trauma stress load in their body and having physical benefits. I have a person who came to me for extreme anxiety. She was perfectionist, and we did the top of this triangle, but these are implicit memory, the levels of intervention. We just did number 2. By the way, that's what I did with you. It's kind of free and accessible. This is how you can like get clarity on what your deeper messaging is and find the sensory inputs that change it. But I call the top one like trauma surgery, because you get in very specifically into your mapping and you rework it and you get physical benefits. I've seen it over and over. This woman came in, she was a perfectionist, also an adoptee. I do a lot of work with people who've had these kind of invisible trauma type things. And we got her all the way through this extreme perfectionism that was just debilitating. It was like ruining her life. She couldn't go, extreme social anxiety, like off the charts. When we finished, she came back in to do her debrief and she told me her psoriasis went away, like all the way gone. Psoriasis is an inflammatory skin condition. She hadn't mentioned it. I didn't know about it. We weren't targeting it. But when this heavy trauma load from her body, some from stuff she didn't even remember, you don't have to remember stuff to move it through your system. And her dermatologist is calling me like, what did you do? What did you do? No, the mind-body connection is powerful. Our belly, our intestines, they call it the second brain. It holds trauma that matches just the way your brain does. Your brain and your spinal cord make up your whole nervous system. And you better believe it. You know it. You said your family saw your veins popping out. That's just because you're a human being. You're like, oh, I'm ready to fight, or I'm ready to run, and your body is physically doing stuff that you're not controlling. So anyway, I just am popping this up here. This packed thing at the bottom, this is the lowest level of intervention. It's just starting to have the awareness, like what we did today. It's complicated. Jules, I appreciate you so much being willing for me to dig it deeper a little bit, but there's an exercise in my book that you can do with a friend to start to look at some of that stuff and even identify it. Because once you identify it, you, your child, whomever, you can start doing the activities that are going to give you the counterpoint and aren't stuff that can ruin your life. You know what I'm saying? So then what we did was the IMI inputs. The next higher one is kind of professional intervention, doing remapping work. There are a whole bunch of advanced therapeutic approaches that don't rely on words. You're not going to talk yourself out of this stuff. It's going to stay right in there. It does not, I mean, how many times have you seen someone who's anorexic and you're like, oh, you show them all the data and they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm going to start eating again. No, that is not what is going on. That is not how it works. People logically know planes are safer than cars, but you're not going to rework a fear of flying just by telling them. It's like, oh yeah, no, it's a different language. So you've got to speak in a different language. And then these intensives are something that I do. Like I said, it's more like trauma surgery. But anyway, I appreciate all the willingness to be vulnerable and share. And I love all the solutions in the chat too. I love people sharing about what works for them. This visceral stuff, music is so powerful. Music sets a tone and it can share so much that words cannot. That is an auditory input, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I appreciate everybody sharing too. I was thinking about, and I love the exercise because I was doing it along with people as well, and it uncovered in real time, the reality. And I think the reality of putting on the happy face and then trying to protect our children at all costs and trying to keep them safe and all the things. And I know we're going to run out of time, but yes.
Can I say one more very important thing?
Yes.
Our children are sovereign. Our
Yes.
children are sovereign. They can solve this the same way we can. Their bodies work the same way ours do. Their bodies are striving for their best, even if we don't understand why it's happening this way. And that is true in the darkest of moments.
Can you share, as we get ready to close, if you see your child experiencing pain, and it could be in a host of different ways. It could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be self-harm, cutting. What are suggested words to use that are language to use with our children to get to possibly help a young person? Could be an adult child.
Yep.
So what would you suggest?
The best thing you can do, and keep in mind, I don't know you all individually, so I don't know the history of your relationship with your child, which comes to bear whenever you say something. They see you through the filter of whatever path you've co-created together.
Yes.
Right? So theoretically, the best things you can do is to share what you see and to ask, what's happened. And if they can't answer because it's something invisible or they don't really know, it's to interface with them as sovereign that they know and share what you do know. So it would look something like this. Hey, Kelli, I noticed you're eating your 4th Krispy Kreme in an hour. And I just wonder what's going on right now. And do you need someone to talk to? And you'd be like, oh, it's just, I don't know, but it's like, well, look, and then that's where like being able to share some education, maybe share something we talked about here, Like I know when hey, I just learned this thing. Like we all do compulsive stuff, and it's just our body's way of saying, hey, help, help, something's going on, and I love you. And you might not be able to answer that, but I learned some other stuff about multi-generational trauma and all these invisible things. And if you want to hear about it, I'd love to tell you, and let it go. If they don't want to talk about it, just let it go. You plant little seeds. Again, they are sovereign. They'll come back to you. Or they'll ask their friends, hey, did you hear about this thing? Or here's a couple links, you can read a little more about it.
Right. That's so great. Questions, observing, sharing, and then leaving it alone. Yeah, that's it. That's perfect. Thank you. You are amazing. You're such a joy. You're such a burst of energy, and you always give really helpful, tangible tools that we can use. I'm going to use that one, what you just shared, momentarily. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Kelli. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
And thank you for fundraising. I just want to say that out loud. Dr. Julie had a birthday recently and texted and said, hey, I want to create a fundraiser for SonRise. So I said, okay, out of the blue. And I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate that as we do this.
I believe so much in what you're doing.
We love what we're doing, and every little bit counts. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here. And as we get ready to wrap up for the day, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Vicki Johnson, who will close us out in our prayer for this beautiful Sunday morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Julie. This was amazing. And my absolute favorite takeaway today is that our children are sovereign. I mean, that just relieves so much pressure. I know for me, and I'm sure for other parents who are on the call. So thank you for everything today, but especially that. God, we thank you for this day that you have given to us in this time of sharing and fellowship on this SonRise Sunday support call. Thank you for Dr. Julie and the wisdom that she has shared, the tools that she has given us to make us better people, better parents, and to assist our children as they go on their journeys. Thank you for the revelation that they are sovereign as you are, God. And so as we go further into this day, constantly remind us of our power, of the wisdom that you have so freely shared with us today, and continue to bless us as we go about our daily tasks. Bless our families and our children until we meet again next week. We give you glory for all of these things. Amen. Thank you again, Dr. Julie. This was just powerful.
Amen.
Thank you so much for having me and for doing the work, all of us for doing the work, just showing up every day.
That's what we're all about. We're doing the work. We're trying to work on ourselves and our families. And thank you, Dr. Vicki, for that incredible prayer. Thank you, Dr. Julie, for being here and being such a great friend to SonRise and to me personally. And thank you to everybody for being here. Have an amazing, amazing Sunday, and we'll see you next week, same time, same Zoom, 9 a.m. Eastern for SonRise. Thank you. Have a great day.